Leona Lewis at 105.7 Highlands Light FM. Good morning. Appreciate you being here. We're at 8:43 now.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.
Good morning. A time to check in on what's going on Money on Wall Street. And as promised, Philip Statler from Statler Financial Services is here to fill in his side of this equation. And it was kind of interesting yesterday. We got all concerned about tech expenses again, didn't we, Philip?
It seems to be that way. I mean, it was kind of a mixed boat yesterday. I mean, 50-50, right? 50% up, 50% down. When we look at the overall four indexes that we kind of keep track of.
Yep, and the tech stocks seemed to lead the drive down more than anything. When we ended up with the day, the Dow ended up, not resoundingly, but up 56 points, is up 56 points. Standard & Poor's down by a rock-crushing 9. NASDAQ kind of took it on the chin, down 172, and the Russell 2000 was up by a rock-crushing, I think, 1.3 points at the end of the day. So it was certainly nothing to write home about, which actually I'm kind of surprised the Dow was up, given the fact that Microsoft tanked by like 10% yesterday after everybody got concerned about their AI expenditures and their cloud revenue. I was kind of surprised to see the Dow survive.
Well, I guess there was enough ups on the other 29 stocks that helped make up for it because, like you said, it wasn't a big gain, but at least even with Microsoft's downward movement, it managed to pull out some green, which means the other stocks had to be doing pretty well that day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of accustomed to the notion of when one Dow component loses 10%, you just expect the Dow to tank. And this particular time, rest of the blue chips, like you say, must have done okay on that 30-stock index. Brings us up to this morning, and all of my top-of-the-hour newscasts from the Consumer News are talking about President Trump has decided who he's nominating for the new Federal Reserve chair. He's a former Federal Reserve governor named Kevin Warsh, and he has been publicly campaigning for a more activist Fed in terms of coping with the economy and the shrinking job market because of AI. It sure sounds like President Trump has a devoted interest rate cutter in his nomination hopper.
It does, but it seems like we've got some opposition, not because of who it is, but because of what's going on with the Fed chair and the whole Fed lawsuit and investigation and that kind of stuff. There's a Senator Tillis who says where's he out of?
He's out of North Carolina, and he said he ain't going to vote for anybody until the Justice Department clears that criminal probe against Paulson because he wants to make sure the Fed's independence is preserved. So we got a Republican already coming out against him.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see if that doesn't put a fly in the ointment, because obviously one senator is not going to stop the whole issue, right?
Yes, so we're going to trigger the tweets out of the White House in 3, 2, 1. I'll bet you he gets called a rhino before the end of the day. What do you think?
Probably so. I mean, it's one of those deals.
And we can mull this mess. Yeah, we can mull this mess over until May because Paulson's term doesn't end until May, so we got a lot of time to kick this thing around. Got to make mention that the current compromise has not gotten through the both houses of Congress to avoid that partial government shutdown tonight at midnight. I'm honestly kind of surprised. The markets haven't really been in too much of a tizzy over it this time.
No, they haven't. I mean, I'm looking at a headline that says Trump backs the Senate government funding deal that includes the DHS extension. But to me, the headline sounds at least like some decent news.
Mm-hmm. And then they sent it back to the House, and the House said a bunch of House Republicans in the, what do they call it, the Freedom Caucus, they're saying, heck no, we won't take that until we fully fund it. So now we could have House Republicans shutting the mess down, which
just can't win.
makes you want to... No, you just kind of want to bang your head against a wall, and that's about the extent of it. That's the big news that happened today. We got something that probably is going to pale in the mess, and that's the producer price index. Got to make sure which inflation gauge we're talking about. And that was a little bit of a disappointment of the process. Year over year, the top line wholesale inflation actually, let's see here. Yeah, it actually eked up a little bit to 3.3% year over year on the top line, but the core number was the one that nobody really wanted to see. It month over month, the core number actually doubled last month's reading. Wholesale inflation is not looking as good as the consumer numbers are.
No, it's not. It's, year over year seems to be staying about static, but month over month seems to be increasing, which I have a hard time making that math work, but it's the government. So, but it is, a little concerning that wholesale inflation does seem to be raising its ugly head still.
Yeah, because those wholesale prices have a tendency to at least partially trickle down to consumer prices, which means in 30 or 60 days we'll feel it on the PPI or the CPI.
CPI, exactly.
I'm getting all my acronyms confused here in the process. And we're in the middle of earnings season, and the big kahuna, until NVIDIA came along, the highest capitalized company in the nation, reported last night. I understand Apple beat their numbers, but then they actually said, ruh-roh, some of our parts are getting more expensive. Did I read that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they really had a super quarter. Their revenue was extremely better. It's like 16% on an annual basis, year over year. That's a pretty good size increase when we look at that. I found it interesting to look at, let's look at the numbers first. EPS, earnings per share, 284 versus 267. Their revenue beat by about $5 billion. iPhone sales blew it up. I mean, they were up $7 billion more than expected. The Mac revenue was
crapola.
Yeah, Mac revenue was down a little bit. iPad revenue was up a little bit, maybe a $500 million. Accessories like wearables and home accessories was down a tad versus estimates. So overall, some decent numbers, and the gross margins went up, which is, that was good for them, from 47 to 48%. Good numbers there. But like you said, they talk about cost increasing, which is going to squeeze that gross profit number, which is kind of what they're looking at going forward. And so it does have Apple trading down today. Not much. I mean, they were down, I think a whole 1% earlier this morning, but now they're only down about 0.25%.
Well, at the very least, it's a relatively flat. Yeah, I'd mentioned yesterday, and I've been reading that memory chip prices are going up rapidly, and that changes a lot of hardware manufacturers' macros. And if folks wonder why we spend so much time talking about Apple when they report, last time I looked anyway, they are the single most held stock in the index-based and most of the other ETFs and mutual funds out there. So probably, folks, whether you know it or not, you own a little Apple somewhere in your portfolio, right?
Well, that's true. And the other thing about Apple is they have so many suppliers, and so those suppliers have a direct correlation to how Apple's doing. So, you got Corning, you've got the Taiwan companies that benefit from them. So, yeah, big deal there. Hey, let's talk a little bit about oil companies, because we've got Chevron and ExxonMobil reporting. Chevron had a good quarter, topped expectations significantly. Revenue was a little short of expectations, but they're trading. Well, they're trading down now about 1/3%. They were up just slightly earlier, but we compare that, and they said that's because they had a huge influx of oil, and they were able to use that and do better by it. ExxonMobil, on the other hand, said because oil prices were up, it affected their results, saying revenue fell, profits fell, They still beat on earnings, but not by much. Revenue, again, slightly above expectations. Again, they're trading down even more. They're down about 1.5% this morning, Dave.
You just feel a need to play a really, really tiny violin when the oil companies say that the lower oil prices are hurting their top line, don't you? You just feel so sorry for them, don't you?
I do, Hey, a big company. They used to be very well known. I mean, especially for camera digital. We used to use their little SanDisk. They used to have those little, little. I can't think of it right now, but we got a lot of them. I got a lot of pictures on a lot of those things floating around my house, actually. But they had a really good quarter, and they're trading up 22% this morning.
Cool. That is something, like you say, we don't have a tendency to buy at Walgreens anymore like chiclets like we used to when we had digital cameras that required those things.
Exactly. And then we have, it's probably the last one I'll give you today is Decker's Outdoor, which always throws me for a loop because I don't associate that with UGG boots or Hoka sneakers, right? That's the company that produces all that stuff. And they had a good quarter. They've upped their earnings estimates for this next quarter, and so they're trading up like 14% today.
I wonder why our tip sheets aren't headlining UGG beats the streets. It would be just too tempting if I was the editor of one of those things. Again, a mixed day yesterday. On balance, it wasn't a bad day. 45 minutes before we open this morning. What are we looking at today?
Dave, I'm looking at my sheet here, and I cannot find a single green index or commodity right this second. The Dow is down 0.6%. S&P 500 is down 0.5%, and the Nasdaq 100 is down 0.7%. The Russell 2000 is down 1.2% this morning. So everything is, I'd say, solid red this morning. The other side of the coin, silver, man, it has given up. It's down, down 15.2% this morning.
I must have flooded the market when I sold the family silver the other day.
Down below 100. I mean, to think it was up 120. Now it's down to $97.21 an ounce. A huge drop. I have no idea what caused that. No. But that's a big deal. Gold is kind of following suit. It's down 6% this morning, still above 5,000, but $5,036 an ounce. Crude oil down 0.7, $64.97 a barrel right now.
All righty. Overseas, I've got some bad news and some good news to share at the very least. The Asian Rim market was virtually solid red at the close this morning at 6 a.m., and I got to believe a lot of that is the same concern over high-tech chip prices that Apple mentioned in their report. The Hong Kong markets were down a full 2%. Mainland Chinese markets were down 0.6% and 0.9%. On the other side of the fence, Europe is feeling pretty good at the moment. The average European index, and it's solid green across Europe, average European index is up about 0.75% halfway through their day. So if you're looking for somebody with a smile on the face, look for a European because everybody else is having a bad start to the day. And that's where we're at. I want to find out how to make all that work for my retirement. I need your eyes to help me do that. Philip, how do I find you?
Then give us a call at 863-382-0037 just to schedule 30 minutes to just talk to make sure that as you look in the future, you make sure that you've got all the bases covered and getting ready for retirement. Again, that number is 863-382-0037. And catch the Statler Financial Radio Show this weekend, 6 a.m. and noon on Saturday, 10 a.m. Sunday morning on Highlands News Talk, 7:30 a.m. and 95.3 FM.
And you and me together next week. I will catch you then. Have a great weekend, all right?
All right, man. Next week we'll be welcome to February.
Oh, yeah, the month went by too fast. Be well, sir. It's 105.7 Light FM and Statler for